Sawona, and welcome to another episode of Living and Innovation. My name is Annelengo. I'm a Tuesday client and push the girl. I've got a bit of a flu, which is but yeah, in this episode I'm going to show you I revamped these floors to look like this deliciousness. Yeah, it took me about like 3 weeks to do it myself. And yeah, I hope you enjoy. So before I get into that flu is still lingering. So before I get into like what I did myself, because as you can maybe we've seen in other videos where the floor was fine and I had to redo it and undo it and redo it. So this was the first time I tried this squeeding method, and clearly it didn't go well. I've said in past videos, and maybe I've mentioned that I think the reason that this didn't work out like I intended was because the ratio, I didn't mix this myself, and I don't know if the guys had ever done this before, but I think their research was off, or they were drunk, one of those two things. Yeah, so this was like the outcome of it not being done properly. This was also coupled with the fact that I hadn't dug proper trenches behind the office to drain heavy rainwater, because when there's heavy rains it gets stuck. I've showed that in other videos. So yeah, this whole situation that they had done for me was not working. It was getting damp and soggy and was starting to lift. You can see how easy it is to just sort of scrape it off the floor. It's not easy. To say it's easy, it's an understatement, but it was relatively easy considering how hard a material concrete is. It is a preferred building material because of its hard and strength properties, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, before I even started redoing it, I first had to scrape off the I guess it's like cement and oxide that was under, as well as the paint that I had painted over, because I was hoping for the best. So I thought I'd only do, you see the wet side of the that is wet now, I thought I'd do that side only, but I realized it would just be a waste of time to fix that side and then do the office in 3 sections when it's really actually a 7x4 space. So I moved the couch and the coffee table that is there, and I extended the space that I was scraping off. So I first go in with the spade, as you saw in the earlier parts. I think it was actually a different day altogether. I first went in with the spade and then I came in with the scraper. I don't know, it's called a scraper, I think. So, and then coming in with the scraper when it's dry, and then also the broom or brush does help to sort of lift the already loose parts of the cement. So this was part of why I had to fix this thing. There were some parts of the oxide that were still stuck to the floor and had cement over and would lift every time it rained, and then there were parts of the paint that was stuck to the cement like this, where it was concrete. And yeah, I'm not sure how or why this happened, but it did. It's my life. So yeah, I'm just scraping it off with the scraper. It takes a bit of patience, and sometimes you have to draw lines on it to sort of loosen it up and create areas that lift easily. But this was this part using the scraper was the most challenging, the longest. It took me the longest actually. I think I said this took me 3 weeks. The 3 weeks was actually just scraping off the stuff that was already there, because cementing took me a day, and then painting with that, you'll see later on, painting took me basically a day. I just had to wait for it to dry and then paint again. um but yeah, I was trying to get like all of it off. This part is dragging now. I would love for it to end. But I had to, like, I was trying to be like diligent with like getting all of it off. As you can see, I'm doing like one section and then scraping. I was really like putting in a lot of effort into trying to get the paint off, because the guys were like, if I just put cement over it, it will lift again. And I was just like, I'm gonna do this my way. So I get the cement. Cement is like 100 rand a bag. I used less than half a bag. It's like 100 rand. So like I used 100 rand worth of cement with some water, which is free where I live. And yeah, so this first mixture, so this was like after I decided I'm done with the scraping, I'm now going in with the cement. So this was the first cement mix that I did. I didn't want to do a lot because I've never done this before. I've just watched a lot of videos and I feel like confident enough to do it, but I've never actually done it. So it was like a bit challenging to mix with the small spade. So I had to go in with this bigger spade, add more water. And yeah, I was a bit scared that if I made it too runny, it wouldn't stay, which was wild, because concrete kind of always sets. At least if it stays dry on a flat surface. There's so many conditions. So yeah, I was just trying to get it to be like a really smooth consistency, and I was really happy with the outcome. And I was like, yes, I am my daddy's daughter. So yeah, as you can see, like it's pretty thick. I didn't expect this to go like this, but also at the same time I was wary of making it too runny without knowing how it would actually go. So I just poured it on the floor, added water to like float it and distribute it so that it stays dry and doesn't harden quickly. So adding water helps, like it helps it stay moist, obviously. But also it helps like when you're distributing it, that you leave a smoother pattern than you would if it was drier. It was a bit difficult to spread because it was thick, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't take it back now because I've already poured it on the floor. I guess I could have just added water on the floor, but I wasn't very confident with doing that. I struggled with getting the corners like sort of straight, because while I was scraping off the floor, some of the plaster cement on the walls was coming off at the bottom. So I wanted to sort of fill those holes and make them professional. In the end, I decided it doesn't matter. I'm just going to, I don't know if it's called wall line or whatever, but that plank that goes along the bottom of the floor and just like makes it blend nicely with the wall. So that's what I'll add later on and not right now. And this first mix was not nice because it really dried quickly, and yeah, it was just a bit of a mess. You'll see with the second pour that I had a bit of a challenge trying to blend the first pour and the second pour, because the first pour had already like started drying and hardening. As much as like when it's all dry, it will be the same strength in terms of hardening, I think. But when the other surface is dry and the one is still wet, it just doesn't blend well. I don't know how else to explain it. It just doesn't blend well. So it was already starting to sort of dry, and I was struggling, child. I was struggling to spread it across to the end where I had decided I would stop. So I went and got more water to try and just like spread it out more, because I thought I was feeling like it's too thick. The layer that I poured, or the surface that I poured, was a bit too thick and I wasn't liking it. And yeah, it wasn't smoothing out like I wanted. So I got more water, tried to do the whole thing again, make it smooth. And then mistake that I made was waiting for it to dry while I was mixing the second pour. The first pour was a bit chunky. It had a bit of pieces that were chunky that I had to work into the floor, which is why it also took me long. So I decided to try and make this like mesh. It's supposed to be like, what do they call those things? A whisk. I was like, okay, I'm gonna try and make a whisk, but I didn't have enough like straight wire, so I only had this. And then I was just like, a Zulu girl maka plan. Actually, ampondo girl maka plan, bro. Ampondo girl maka plan. So I made the second pour a bit more runny. I made it a bit more runny because the first one gave me a challenge. So see, it's quite like, this one is quite like smooth, and yeah, it isn't chunky. I still had a bit of chunk. I found like one huge chunk that I broke into that space there, but that space there was one of the reasons that I wanted to redo the floor. It was feeling hollow, it was lifting, it was just ugly. Yeah, but you can see how this mix is a lot easier to pour, and it is easier to float. So here is where the dry part, I waited too long to do the second pour because I wasn't confident if it just become powdery like the first time. And I waited for it to dry, and yeah, and then I was struggling to like where it meets the dry parts. It was so difficult to blend, and even now there's still lines, but it's part of like the design, I guess. So I just spread it quickly before it dries. I just poured it and spread it first, and then waited for it to get a little bit dry so that I could add more water to my bucket and then come back and float. Floating just makes the surface like look smooth. I tried doing it with the sponge, but I realized the sponge was just lifting all of my concrete mix. And then yeah, I just decided to use that thing. I think it's called a float, cement float. I don't know what it's called, but I know what it's used for. So yeah, and now I'm just adding water and floating the whole surface that I just poured. I poured this whole side until where the coffee table ends on the right bottom right, and waited for it to dry. It didn't take long to dry. I did this early in the morning when I got there, and then by the time I left, the sun was up, it was hot, and it was drying. So this was a few minutes later. This was still in the morning, and then yeah, and then I think this was like the following day. The thing is with watching YouTube videos and thinking you can build a house is that it's not really true. I think that's my toxic trait. My toxic trait is that I watch people building other things, and then I think I'm automatically capable of it myself. And that is the story with this. I don't know what it's called. I call it like cement glue. It's called Pro Bond, actually. It's called Pro Bond or Power Bond or something like that. You mix it with water. You're supposed to mix it with water and then mix it with the concrete. So in my first step or second step, where I was mixing the cement, this is where I was supposed to add this liquid. But I was like, I already got it, so let me just like use it to paint. And then it's not suitable as a top finish, but it works as a bonding agent, so I just used it anyway. It was really quick. It took me like about an hour or two. And then this is just me now opening the paint, which I've had for a while, and I need to mix to get the gray back. I think the most traditional or easily available colors are like black, red, and green, and gray. And so I chose gray because like red is just wild, green is just wild, black maybe, but no, apparently it makes a room feel shorter. So yeah, anyway, lighter floors make a room feel like it was taller walls, apparently. Don't quote me on this. So I went in with the brush first on the sides just to make sure that I don't mess up the walls too much, although I'm not like too fussy about messing up the walls because I'm going to cover most of that up with that plank, that the wall petticoat. It's called a skirting. I remember now. I think it's called a well skirting. Skate if so dong. So I did like the brush on the sides, and then I went in with the roller brush on the whole way. My brush is a bit old and it just wasn't doing what it was supposed to do on the tray, so I just decided that, you know what, I'm going to put the tray aside and pour the paint onto the floor and then distribute it with the roller brush, because tray. So I'm just cleaning up the tray with the brush and making sure I don't waste paint, because it is actually expensive. This is a 5 liter, and I think it cost me like 300, and it is enough for me to paint the whole office, which is a 7x4 once. So I'll need like two coats. I want to do 2 coats, so it's about 600 rands to do 2 coats of this brand specifically. I think you can get it for like 220 also. I think there's one shop that sells it for 220 in town. So overall this cost me less than 1,000, because the pro bond was, I think, 150, 200. And as much as it was exhausting, I really enjoyed doing this myself. Thank you for watching this episode. It was a bit longer than my other videos. In the next episode, I'll be redoing, not in the next episode, in the next building episode, because I'll be doing more charts in the next episode. But I'll be removing those shelves because I installed them the wrong way around. I didn't even know that you could install bookshelves the wrong way around. And if you want to know what I mean, you'll have to wait until I release the episode.